let's build a loot filter together, shall we? I'm going to try not to be too fast with this, as I assume if I just rush through stuff, people are not going to be able to keep up, and that's not going to be great. To create your own loot filter, and that is what I recommend, you can download and export them. As you guys are going to see through this video, you can adjust and edit them as you go, which I just think is overall more effective when it comes to progressing through Last Epoch, and therefore that is what I'm going to recommend. I do not know if this game's coming to console. If you have different controls, I apologize in the future, but for now, you want to come into your settings where we can find our loot filters. You'll see here that you can already have some that are pre-made. I don't know if we can actually just kind of straight up copy and paste these to duplicate them, which would be useful, but for now, we're just going to go with a nice, fresh loot filter. I'm going to create my own. Thank you. Create new filter. We want to name it first. I'm going to name this Mage Guide. I'm going to play casters, so you guys who have been following the channel probably won't be surprised to see that we've got a mage one and we've got a witch one, plus a couple of others that I just kind of played around with. The first thing that I recommend doing, because this is effectively going to create a blank canvas, right? Because as it stands right now, if we go around, start defeating loads of enemies, we're just going to see crap all over the place, and we want to turn that off. So the first rule should be just come into your visibility here, hide, and add that in. That's going to hide everything that's not potions, gold, and runes on the ground, okay? Runes are always going to appear. We can always pick those up. That's not a problem. Don't do this and leave. This would be pretty tragic because you'll never see any loot again. And now each rule that we put on top of this is going to become an exception to this rule. So the way this works is if I put in here show and I want to recolor, and I like all of my mage stuff to be blue, and I like all of my witch stuff to be purple, and you guys are going to see why I'm saying that later on in the video. And then I can add a condition in. So let's say, for example, and this is something that I'm going to point out to you guys, let's go to item type here, and you could put none, and then you could have this basically be any item type, but then you can't change the subtype. What I mean by this is, because I'm playing a mage, if I come into offhands, decide I want to put a catalyst on there, and then into one-handed, and I want to put a scepter on there, I'm not going to be able to change the subtype. And for me, this is an issue because we can't pick class-specific items. This is more obvious if we do this with an armor type, for example. So if we go into armor here and we put all of the armor in, we can't select the subtype. Whereas if we take all of this off and we turn this into just helmet, for example, we are now going to get access to the subtypes. And this is something that just makes it take a little bit more time, but is worth it. So in my case, because I'm playing as the mage, I can now make it so that I only see mage style armor. And as you can see, we can actually change this as we go along. So my character right now is level 60, so I could just go like this. And now I'm only going to see stuff that's level 60 or above. And that can be one way to do it. But as you can see, it's not always a straight up trade. Sometimes the lower level one has more armor. And maybe like if you are doing a ward strategy, you might keep the lunar helm on there because you want to do ward. Another alternative is if you know what it is you're going to be doing with your build, you can in fact search up here. So for example, I'm using quite a lot of ward as my defense right now. I can put ward in there and I could simply limit myself to those two hats, right? I could turn this off, click those two, and now I'm only going to see headsets that drop that give me ward bonuses. This is going to depend entirely on what it is that you want to do with your character. We also have things like elemental damage on here, so maybe you want this, but overall, you're just going to have to decide what it is that you think is going to have the best effect for you and your build. So of course, we're going to add that in. Now that's not technically finished. We should realistically add additional conditions to this because what we've done is we've said, hey, we want mage style helmets. But as of right now, we're going to see every single helmet that drops. And I don't think we want that. So what we can also do is add in any other kind of change that we want. So for example, we could decide that we only want to see rare. Quick editing from Future Joe. Things we're talking about rarities. If you're going to put rare in, you might as well add in the exalted, unique, and set items as well, just so that you can pick out the higher level gear that you might be seeing as you're going around. We're actually going to add this in as a catch-all later on in the loot filter anyway, so you should see them all. But I just feel like if you do want to go with only the very specific things that you've picked, it's going to be a good idea just to be able to see all of the different high-level types of items. And we could decide that we only want to see something that has spell damage. Maybe we also want to have cast speed. I think we already picked that. Nope, we got cast speed there. Look. Maybe we want to have health. For anybody that doesn't know, health is going to be an extremely important defense for anybody. When it comes to health, I would always pick the hybrid health. This is going to basically give you added health and percentage added health. That's the difference between normal, this added and increased. One of them is flat health, one of them is percentage, but you might as well just go with the hybrid health. This is just generally going to be stronger. And because I'm playing as a mage, I really like having mana spent gained as ward because it's really strong. I'm going to leave these skill specific ones for later because I actually like having those as a separate one that I can see because I want to be able to pull that off of gear and turn it into runes so that we can craft it back onto gear, which we'll talk about in a different video. It's going to be very difficult to go through this without talking about crafting, but we will go through a basic crafting video directly after this one, but I think this is more important to do first. And once you're happy with all of your selections here, you can go ahead and you can update this, and that is now, I'm only going to see good helmets. Something I also kind of like here is, let's say you pick up a piece and it's got one of the affixes that you want. Let's say you pick up a helmet and it's got health on it. You can now switch this to 2, and you're only now going to see things that drop have 2 of the affixes. And this is what I was saying about, you can have this evolve depending on how it is that your character is shaping. You could even make it so that if you're happy with how your affixes have fallen across your gear, you can even make this specific to the gloves or gear that you have. And let's say you get like a perfect set of gloves drop or something like this. You can come on to advanced options and decide that now you really want to see things that have higher tier than the stuff that you're wearing, which is again just going to allow you to continually progress any of the gear that is that you're wearing. So you can have this actually progress with you as a character, but I'll leave that up to you guys as something that you guys can fiddle around with if that's what you want to do. Because we've just done this, and realistically speaking, if you've gone a little bit more in depth into how many affixes you've done, you've gotten 2 out of say 10 different affixes that you might want to pick. You might want to have some flexibility in this so you actually see some loot. We're going to go ahead and we're going to duplicate this 7 times. We want to have a total of 8 layers of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come in, and instead of this saying helmet, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go body armor. And then we're probably going to have to change the type of armor that we're seeing. And that then is just going to save us some time in terms of creating the new rules. Okay, so we're going to go all the way down. We're going to get all the different armor types on there. When it comes to your boots, make sure you add movement speed in. I'm fairly sure that can only be gotten on the boots. And we can't, unfortunately, add 2 separate affix tabs, so we can't decide that that is one that's guaranteed to do. Something you could do is reduce this to only movement speed, but then you're not going to get any of the other affixes. So that's just something that you can, again, toy around with, customize for yourself. And once you've done all of the pieces of armor, you're probably going to look with something like this, and you're like, hey, why have we still got these 3 helmets left? That's because underneath armor, we have accessories that we also want to get filtered out, especially as some of these are very specific. Let's look at the amulet here in particular. All of these have a typing. For example, we have additional damage over time protection. If you are a minion build, you only want to really see the turquoise amulet. And as a caster, so as a mage, you probably want to just have the cast speed, the brass amulet. Same thing when it comes to rings then. We want to go in here, get into the different types we got. I'm sure a lot of people will probably want to see movement speed, but again, we have things like the minion specific ring. So we've got some turquoise on there. We've got mana regen on the sapphire ring. Opal ring's looking pretty good with all of its ability scores and cooldown recovery. And then lastly, onto the relic. We still need to add in things like weapons and offhands, which is going to basically be exactly the same. You probably could duplicate what we just already did. I am going to still have these coming up as blue. And again, when it comes to this, just make sure you're doing 1 item at a time. You might be tempted by, like, let's say something like the scepter, because you can actually get magic damage scepters. But if you want to have like a mix of those show up, you're going to want to do those individually. So let's go with the wand here. There we are. We've got some affixes in there. And again, I'm going to go with at least 2 of the ones that I want. So we've got things like spell damage, mana saving, all that kind of good stuff. In terms of gear, we're looking pretty good. We still have some things that'll be missing though, and we definitely need to add in idols. So we'll just add all of those in. You can, of course, decide you're going to do all of these individually, only get certain ones to drop. But I feel like for now, and for most people that are just kind of looking for this kind of stuff, it's going to be better just to have all of the idols drop for you. Otherwise, this is going to get too complicated. We could add condition for like affixes if we wanted. I think for now, just keep the idols in. That's not going to be too damaging for you to see those. And the last 2 things that I kind of like to have in are, if you are going to do second character, I like to add in a color that is the same color as that character. So as I said before, in my character, I'm going to do a witch. I like that being pink or purple. Let's go with purple. It's a little bit less bright. And then what I usually like to do is select affix and then select a bunch of witch character affixes. All right. So basically, I've just put a ton of affixes affixes in here that my witch might want, and I'll probably go with just like 2 on there, so if anything really good drops, then I'll see it and I'll be able to pick it up. There are some affixes in here we haven't really mentioned yet. I'm going to mention those now because we're going to actually use those for the mage in a second. Final one that I like to do is putting all of your skills as affixes as a rule. So for example, we're going to go in here, we're going to add affix, and you can see that I have Flame Ward on, but we're going to search for that. Flame Ward. And the reason for this is these don't seem to drop very often as runes, but they will drop on gear often enough that what we want to do is break these down so that we can craft them onto other items. So any skills that you think you'll ever use across your characters should also have as their own color. So we're going to have Flame Ward, Meteor, Focus, and for me, I like these to drop as a nice orange. So now when I'm going around, I'll see if anything drops with my specific skills on it that I want to deconstruct. It'll be down there as orange. Okay, gonna have that as just 1. I'm gonna add that in. And lastly, just in case you've missed something in all of your other lines, we should realistically add in rarity, set, unique, and exalted. So these are going to be high level items that you might see as you're going through on your adventure. And that's just a catch-all, just in case you happen to have missed one of the armor types out of all of this, because realistically, they should already get shown.